Hey friends, it's Jess and welcome back to another video on my channel. Today we're going to be making a card with the new release from Simon Hurley, Create and Ranger. This card is actually going to be a slightly smaller than a slimline card. So if you guys are not familiar with slimline cards, basically they're just kind of a more narrow and long version of an A2 size card. They're a little taller and a little thinner, and usually they fit inside of a business size envelope. Now, the actual size of a slimline card varies depending on who you ask. My card ended up being around 3.5 by 8. I started off by stamping some of the images from this adorable new stamp set called Welcome Home. I love all of the images and how versatile these are for a lot of different types of cards. So I chose a cute little living room set. So I used the rug, the couch, and a potted plant to sort of form a little cluster of images for the base or the focus of my card. I used my Misty to stamp these images out, and I used some black ink that was safe for alcohol markers, but I didn't actually end up using alcohol markers, so a waterproof ink or something like that would have worked here as well. I decided that instead of doing traditional coloring for these, I actually wanted to get in some practice doing some ink swiping for the coloring. So basically what this means is I just take the actual ink pad itself and swipe or kind of smear it across the image, and it colors the image, and you get a really cool result without having to do any coloring and without having to do any ink blending. So you just take the ink pad and you swipe it right onto your stamped image. You can actually mix and match colors here. I used Breakup blue and then actually went back in with Midnight Snack to give it a little bit of a two-tone effect for the coloring of the rug. Now I'm using just a piece of mint tape here so that I can mask off my images. This helps me be able to be a little more free with my ink swiping, and it makes it just a little bit easier to get these images colored and ready to go. Now I've chosen a few different colors that I felt coordinated fairly well together. Like I mentioned, I used Breakup Blue and Midnight Snack for the rug, and then I went back in with Woof for the couch, and then I decided to use both Midnight Snack and later Gator for the potted plant. Once my color swiping was all done, I went ahead and trimmed all of these with a pair of sharp scissors. Now, my tip that I always give when I'm talking about fussy cutting is that it's better to move the paper, not the scissors. So try to hold your scissors as still as possible and only move the paper or cardstock, because this gives smoother results when you are cutting around your shapes. Now, I did this for all of the images, but I do believe Ranger also sells a digital download that you can get for coordinating dies. So it's not a physical product, but something you would use with your cutting machine, which would be excellent for this sort of thing, so you wouldn't have to take the step to fussy cut it. I'll leave a link down below in case you guys want to check that out. Once I was done cutting out all of my pieces, I went ahead and started trying to figure out exactly how I wanted to lay out my card. I felt that it was a little too plain, so I decided to build a scene for my little living room set. I played around a little with the placement of where I wanted the floor to be versus where I wanted the wall to be, and then I went to work on creating my scene. I decided to stick with my color palette that I already had, and I used the Breakup Blue to make a sort of wallpaper on the background of the card. Now, I didn't keep this in exactly one pattern. As you can see, my slimline card is longer than the stencils, so I got a little creative and I made the pattern a little more interesting. Now, you could have lined this up and just sort of slid it over and it would have worked perfectly, but I kind of liked the difference in the background and not having it perfectly even. Once I was done with my ink blending, I moved on to the floor and I decided to use the Splinter background stamp. I stamped this in Grrr ink, which is a nice brown color, and then I went actually back through with the foam blending applicator piece. This is for the mini ink blending tool, and I just ink blended on a little bit of the Grrr color just to make it look like the floor was the one color, the brown, and then also had the darker lines of the wood grain in it. I felt like this made the scene really come to life compared to what it looked like when it was just a plain white background. This is a really fun way to add some interesting character to your cards. Now, if you can help it, don't drop your glued piece of stamped image on your card, but accidents happen like you just saw there. I decided to use a little bit of liquid adhesive for this. So this is the multi-medium matte finish from Ranger, and it's just a liquid adhesive that comes in a little bottle, and it works really well for holding your cards together. You can also get a fine tip applicator for this if you like to have more precision and control over where your ink goes. Once I placed all of my images exactly where I wanted them, I was ready to figure out my sentiment. I decided that I wanted to go with something that was a little more versatile, but I still wanted it to kind of have a main focus. So I went with the sentiment, "Congrats on your new home." I felt like this was something you could send maybe to your neighbor who just moved in, or a friend, or anyone who just bought a new house or moved into a new place, be it a house or an apartment or whatever. There was a lot of different ways that I could use this for friends that have big changes going on in their lives, so I felt like this was a perfect card and sentiment for me. I went ahead and attached that to a white card base with my ATG, that's an advanced tape glider, and that finished off the card. I left it really simple, and I hope you guys love it. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today, and I'll see you guys in another video really soon.